Welcome to Raging Bullets, episode 561, Pop Culture and Whatnot returns. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, Dr. Norge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. How many times is Sean going to do the opening? So says the sensei of the Whatnot, Segulin.
How's it going, eh? Third time's the charm.
I think it was more than 3. I kept getting the episode number wrong. We haven't done a Pop Culture and Whatnot episode in a while. And what Pop Culture and Whatnot is, if you haven't been a long-time listener of the show, this is a chance for us to occasionally step outside of our DC Comics focus and talk about some topics that we're interested in outside of the DC universe. On this one, we're joined by great creator Ted Sikora as we talk about the upcoming book Bloom, Tap Dance Killer, and Apama, the Undiscovered Animal. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Sponsoring this episode, of course, is DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Jim, tell us what's going on over at DCBService.com.
Well, they always keep having these great bundle deals, and you check it out. It's just, DC Universe, variant covers, various other deals that they're going to help make things a little bit more affordable for us. But they also, not just comics, they've got statues, they've got T-shirts and whatnot. So DCBS, great location for some savings. So thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, there's a lot of DC in the latest releases. They've got Weird Western Tales, Jonah Hex hardcover, Volume 1, 42% off, only $43.50. Justice League of America, celebration of 60 years, 42% off, only $17.39. Shazam, The World's Mightiest Mortal hardcover, Volume 2, 42% off, only $28.99. Wonder Woman, Love is a Battlefield hardcover, Volume 2, 42% off, $14.49. InStockTrades.com and DCBService.com have been wonderful sponsors of our show. Right now, I will say this, when it comes to DCBService.com, keep in mind that pre-ordering right now your comics, I've been a long-time pre-order from DCBService.com. In these uncertain times where books are solicited and then they're going to be canceled, please keep in mind that DCB Service will cancel a book. They'll announce the resolicitation. And in the case of books like Bloom, for example, Bloom is going to be, we talk about it on this episode, Bloom is going to be, it's currently solicited, but it's going to be resolicited because of what's going on in our current times. These are books that were put on the solicitations list before we knew, obviously, all of this was going to impact our lives so much. So keep in mind, it's always safe to pre-order through DCBService.com. They will let you know of any cancellations and resolicitations of your books. And I always find that's a great organizing factor for me, is sometimes when you know, hey, okay, this book has been canceled, but they're going to resolicit it at a later date, keeps me in mind to look out for it in the future. So I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Thank them for the amazing deals. Right now, I'm doing a lot of comic reading, and it is the source that I go to get my comic books. So I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for supporting our show. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Pop Culture and Whatnot, a division of Raging Bullets, is a spoiler show. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So if you haven't read them, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk to Ted Sikora. Joining us once again is longtime friend of the show, Ted Sikora, and native of our hometown, which is really great. We're going to be talking today about his work on Bloom, Tap Dance Killer, and Apama. And Ted, welcome back to Raging Bullets.
Thank you, Sean and Jim, for having me.
So I want to kick off right away to talk about Bloom. You were kind enough to give us a preview copy, and this is an upcoming book that's going to have an upcoming issue number 1. And it's another one spinning out of this Apama universe that we met you ages ago talking about Hero Tomorrow, and it's spinning out into its own comic, Apama. And it's now, years later, we're talking to you about yet another spin-off, a high-quality spin-off in Bloom. Tell us about Bloom. Like, where did Bloom come from? What is the origins of this character? This book, I should say. What's the origins of this book, Bloom?
Yeah, well, it is the origin origin of the character. Bloom is a prequel. We always try to, be inspired by kind of local things if possible, to the Northeast Ohio region. And when I was growing up, kids used to always talk about Helltown, and it was this area in the woods that was overtaken by the government for the park. But all these houses were left in the middle of the woods, and in the forest. So, and they were very out of place. And it was alleged that this was an area where there was this cult activity, all kinds of strange stuff. And as a kid, I was never old enough to actually go out there. So your mind just kind of, imagines what it might be, and it turns out most people who I've known who were there said it was just a place people would go and party, but what about so we're making Apama the undiscovered animal, and we're always trying to build up our classic rogues gallery issue after issue. So we get to issue 5, which was the issue of the Fantastic Four when Dr. Doom was introduced. All right, we are introducing our Dr. Doom in issue 5 of Apama. That is where I had the idea that it's this cult of Helltown, and the leader is, I always think like witchy characters are kind of overdone. So what I wanted was like a hippie, like a flower child that had this cult, but she was kind of on a whole different level of reality, and dealing with a lot of the other kinds of spiritual stuff that I've read through the years and I've come to believe through the years. So I took sort of those ideas and just let my imagination go wild. And Regina is this woman. She's got symbols all over her body. She's got this kind of tribal belly dance outfit. And, I when I describe Regina to people, I'm like, this is a character that could fuck up Superman. And, like, how could she fuck up Superman? Because she can get inside of his head, like in ways that no character has, and make him not believe anything about his own reality. So I wrote an entire screenplay about Regina's origin for preparation of Apama 5, even though it wasn't going to be any part of that story. Takes place in 1969, issue 5 debuted of Apama. And I had the screenplay, which is a self-contained thing. We started shopping it around to production companies. We weren't really getting anywhere. But as our comic, profile was growing, got to a point where I decided to do Tap Dance Killer as a series. But in searching for an artist for Tap Dance Killer, I thought I'm also going to search for an artist on this Bloom screenplay. I'm just going to convert the screenplay into a graphic novel. So we did a simultaneous search for 2 artists. And that's when we got Donny Hadiwijawa for Tap Dance Killer and then Butch Mappa for Bloom.
It's interesting to hear about the origins of these characters and how long they've been percolating or where they were intended to go originally. Like, I like the fact that this was a character where you're like, right from the get-go, one of the things I like knowing from a creator is how do you get to know your characters? And in this case, you took this character that you were planning for Apama 5 and you did a screenplay to get to know the character and to flesh out who she is, her backstory, because you're looking at this, to your point, of being your Dr. Doom. So this is a character that you got to get to know. And as jumping a little bit into Bloom issue number 1, one of the things that I really liked about Regina in the story is you like her from the beginning. There's something captivating about her. You get why Ramsey, the comic creator who is looking to create his own villain, you get why he's drawn to her. There is something about her that I think Dr. Doom has that quality too. I think some of my favorite Dr. Doom stories are the ones where you do feel a certain level of sympathy to him or a certain level of understanding to him, where there's times where you like Victor Von Doom. And I think that Regina has those qualities too, where there is something charismatic about her. Because you got to believe when somebody's leading a cult that there's something that would make people follow this person to the point that they do. And I think that is something that I really enjoyed about this story, was the fact that this is a very fully realized character. And it was fun to read issue number 1 of Bloom. Then what I did is I went back and read Apama and the appearances in Apama. And when you take a look at her from that angle, it's really different when you get to see her in some of her early years, you know, to her origins, and then see her when she has had some time under her belt, so to speak, and really has become fully royalized into the villainous character that you intend her to be. It's an interesting sort of ability, and your work actually does this a lot, because we talked about this with Hero Tomorrow and its relation to Apama, how, you know, if you see the movie first, it's got kind of one angle. If you read the comic first, then go to the movie, there's another way of looking at it. And this works really in the same way, where seeing her backstory after reading Apama and then going back to Apama afterwards, it's a different sort of feel for her when you read her in Apama, having seen a glimpse into her past in the first issue of this, which is really interesting with the character. So it is something like, so when you're starting to approach the screenplay with Regina, how did you get to know her? Like, what do you do as a creator to get to know this person, to start making her three-dimensional instead of this, like I think the initial flat character that you would think of? Because I felt like she was alive by the end of issue 1. I really felt like she was a fully realized person, which I think is very cool.
Well, this gets even weirder and more meta crazy. So as I was, my other, I do comics, I do film. My other, I was trying to figure out this leader of the Helltown cult. Who is this person? I know I wanted it to be a woman. I just didn't know, what she should look like. So I was shooting an event at Cleveland Public Theater. It's called Pandemonium. It's their annual fundraiser. And it's like there's 100 performers on like 12 different stages all night rotating. It's a blast. But there was this dancer in the crowd, and I was like, oh my gosh, the look of this this woman, that's kind of the look I want for Regina, So I didn't even get to say anything to her, but I got a shot of her. And then just because I have a lot of friends in that sort of arts community, a friend of mine posted a photo of herself with 3 other people. And one of them was this person. I'm like, oh my gosh. I sent her a friend request and I said, this is going to sound crazy and I'm coming out of nowhere, but I'm doing this comic book and I really think you'd be a neat inspiration for the villain. So what maybe the people listening don't realize is this is the very story of the origin of Regina.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So if I was to describe Bloom, it's about a struggling comic book creator in 1969 who is trying to create a villain for his superhero. And this creator actually had the same dream as our main character, Ilya, in Apama, about Apama. So where Ilya becomes Apama, this guy only decides to make it into a comic book. So that is significant for reasons that will be later on revealed. But I was trying to do a photo shoot with this woman, and we could never get our schedules together, So in the meantime, again, my imagination kind of went wild. I'm like, oh, what would happen if she and I got out into the woods to do this sort of photo shoot? I mean, she's kind of a very mysterioso, dark vibe. What if we were out there and something weird happened and she started actually, once these symbols were painted onto her body, she becomes she breaks on through to the other side. She really does, if these symbols really are magic. And then that opened up the whole world of who Regina, how she comes to be, and the sort of other reality that she gets in touch with.
The thing that I really liked about Ramsey's backstory, as we were learning about him, was it links back to Apama, where he's talking about this legend of this animal, this the throughout history, the animals competing to be at the top of the heap, and how this competition led to the Apama coming out and winning the competition, but also, what we know about Apama's story with Apama, kind of saying, well, I'm above all you, and I'm out. It's like, I've done what I've wanted here. I'm out. Lion, you can kind of have that title. I'm going to go do my thing, because that's how I roll. But he's also tapping into these other spiritual forces, these primal forces, and doing it through this artwork, this tattoo artwork that he's creating, and he does it first on this mannequin. And I thought it was just really cool in this process that Ramsey's like trying to use lore and knowledge, spiritual knowledge and things like that to craft this character that has a fully realized life in there. And I was really enjoying his whole story in how like this character has to, and he was more into the villain than the hero, which was really interesting. You know, it was how much he was driven by needing this really strong villain, which we all know part of what drives your interest in the hero is how compelling the opponent is. If every opponent is somebody that the hero can just run over and they're, you know, thug number A, there comes a point in time where that's only going to get you so far. You really want the villain to be just as compelling as the hero for that tete-a-tete as you go through it. So I loved the creation of the character and in the story. And it was something that I've really liked about your work in general has been this idea of this historical lore that these characters come from, that there is a history that's there. It happens with Apama. It's happened now with Regina, who's on the other side of it with this magical, this spiritual piece being brought in. And it was something that I really enjoyed about, like, traveling along with Ramsey in the creation of this character. I felt like he was our accessible riding buddy in the very beginning of the book. And it was something that I really liked about him because he's human. He's very human. He's not perfect. He's got his flaws. All of us can relate to him. You know, he's a guy that I can see hanging out with. And it was something that I really dug about the introduction of the story, was getting to know him and why he was so drawn to this idea of creating this character that he hadn't quite named yet.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, no, I'm glad that's coming through. And yeah, I mean, he's a comic book geek, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he's about as every man as a comic book reader can relate to, I suppose.
Yeah, I tell you, I'm impressed with one. I love your universe. I absolutely love this. You know, there's the interconnection of all the different books but it's the strength is, if you only read the one, it's not like, oh, I got to read this and I got to read this. It's not I got to read this. It's now you know the rest of the story. It's that little bit extra that adds to the enjoyment of it. And, you know, with Bloom, when we first saw her in Apama, I was like, oh, this is cool. I like this. This is nice. Because I do like a good, strong female character, especially like I do like a good, strong female villain character, because there's not that many of them out there. So I was like, I was interested in seeing where she was going to go with Apama, and just wasn't just physical power. I loved the mind games and all just the tweaking she was doing to Apama. Those were some awesome stuff. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then when the book comes out, I'm like, oh my God, this is even better. It was just one of those, I really digged it. And, you know, to me, she's got, you know, I think off page on her. And that's, you know, something that it was very quick. You caught on to it. Like when I'm reading her dialogue, it's kind of like a honey whiskey kind of sound. It's got that sweet, but it's got that edge to it. You know, just that little bit of, you know, she's lived a life, but she still has that, you know, that beauty to her. And it's, you know, kind of like I hear that, you know, kind of voice, and you can tell, and you can see the movement, and you can just see the flow and the dancer just in her, and just how everything's laid out. I'm absolutely loving this character. And, you know, I loved her in Apama, and now I'm like, oh man, this is awesome.
Oh, thank you very much. We're let's see, I guess we're about 79 pages in. We're thinking it's going to be about 110. So, yeah, that first issue is 40 pages of story, which is, you know, most comics are like 22. And the reason being, this was originally intended to be a graphic novel. And because when we did Tap Dance Killer, I sort of realized the advantage of doing the single issue release before the trade. You get so many people trying the book that wouldn't try a trade of an indie. And so when I was looking at this for a good chapter point, I just didn't feel like there was a great chapter ending for an issue 1 until I got to page 40. So it's going to be still a $3.99 book, but it'll be jam-packed.
Let me ask you about that, because I believe actually all of your books you do an additional page count, right? I was like looking back, because here's what I've been doing, and this will actually tell you how much I really enjoy your work. So I've been rebuying your work through Comixology, so I've got like paper collection. I've got I've got the hardcover collections, and I really am just doing this because it's Apama came out in the trades, like in the collected editions originally, and you did this like re-release of single issues of Apama, where it was starting to be released monthly. I like the book so much that I started grabbing those and rereading it that way, just because I really dig the book. So that was when, I think when you read it all collected, you don't really realize the meat and potatoes that's going into each individual issue. And you take a look, you're doing extra page counts in your books. What led to that decision? Because I really appreciate it, because I feel we're getting these issues that just have a lot of meat to them. I get to really know the characters. I think you're covering a lot of ground in each issue. What led to that choice to deliver them that way?
Sure. So Milo Miller, the co-writer on Apama, and I will, we go through our script, and we know we're at least going to hit 22 pages, but sometimes we, just can't tell the story we want to tell in 22 pages. There's just something that is too important. And, we're not under the leadership of any other publishing ideals, or, we can do whatever we want. So it costs us a little more money, but at the same time, it's like, we don't put out anything that we don't think is just the best it can be. So, if it's a few extra pages to flesh something out that's going to have a bigger impact in the end, we don't even think twice about it. We just do it.
It impacts the story for me because it's something I noticed as I was going through and reading them, and I appreciated that as a reader, where I'm like, wow, okay, they made some choices here to say this story warrants that on there. So that's why I wanted to mention it, because it stood out to me. And I feel issue over issue, I feel the quality is there, because something in the case of your stories, there aren't deleted scenes. There aren't pieces you can cut out, because if you do, you lose something. And the panels that you have present are all there for a reason. And so I really appreciate the choice myself as a reader, because like I said, I've been rebuying these because I'm really enjoying them. So,
and we did, there's been some remaster on these single issues. So what happened is with Tap Dance Killer coming out in singles, we thought, well, Apama's never been presented that way. So we'll kind of double up our marketing efforts a little bit, or double up on somehow. Well, I don't know. It makes sense, I think, to, promote two books just as easily as you're promoting one in a way. So, and we went back into it, some years have passed. We've learned a lot, and some of the captioning got tweaked. I think at times our narration was a little, how do I put it? We cut back on the narration a little bit for the single issues, because at times I think we were a little too influenced by sort of Bronze Age stuff. Which I love the Bronze Age, it's still my favorite era, but there's a lot of narration often in those things. With the single issues, we thought, let's just try to keep it a little more streamlined. So if it's not really adding new information, we're going to just cut it. I have found there were people who really did enjoy the singles more, and I was glad to hear that, because I hopefully we learned something along the way.
Rereading it again, it really was like a new experience for me, because I have the hardcover collections, and I rebought those on Comixology, because there's times where like traveling, and even at night sometimes when I read at night, I'll use my iPad because it's backlit, and I like to read comics before I go to sleep, so I'll rebuy things that I really enjoy just to have it in that format. So I do own the trades or the collected editions of both Apama books, and I've been buying the singles along the way, and I've been enjoying rereading them in single format, which I know I've got the collected editions, but you're right. There's something to reading that delivery. The remastered piece is something that I appreciate. The extra work that was being done in that. For me as a longtime fan, it's nice to go back and just kind of experience this book again in a different way. And you're right, it wasn't delivered that way, so it's nice to be able to experience that way now. Because I love singles. I love, being able to read comics in that format. And I like collected editions just as much because sometimes it's fun to be able to read the story where you hit the cliffhanger and you're able to continue. And that's fun too. So it's been great. But the re-release of Apama has been appreciated because I'm digging it.
And it's been a confusing thing at on the con circuit. People ask me, so what's the first appearance of Apama? I'm like, well, you got a half hour? No, but I think, if you're talking about single issue, Apama 1 is the first single issue of Apama. And people don't really collect trades that way. First appearance of Regina, we've got that issue 5. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see as time goes on what is regarded as sort of the first appearances of these characters.
Absolutely. So one of the things, and I want to talk more about Bloom, but one of the things I want to talk about is release, because right now we're in this crazy time for comics. And so what does this look like for a book like Bloom right now? Because you got a number 1 that's going to be coming out, and that's the piece that we're talking about. And I want our listeners to keep an eye on it because we're going to be telling you more along the way as far as when it's time to pre-order this book and make sure your comic shop's aware that Bloom is coming your way. But what does this look like for you now? Because that's one of the things where my heart goes out right now because I love the comic medium. And it's been very good to me for my entire life. It's my sense of escape. So creators such as yourself who are pouring their passion into it, you're really reaching out to people like me who are looking for this, to keep them going, especially in times like this now. So what does this look like for you when you're trying to launch Bloom right now? Well,
it is in the April preview guide, we took out a half-page ad. We have 3 different covers, there's an incentive cover kind of thing, and which I'd never done before. So I was excited to try all this. And right when that book was supposed to be out, all the stores across the country the preview guide, all the stores were closed. And I got a email from my rep at Diamond, and he said, look, this is not a good time to launch a number 1. And I'm like, yeah. So he said, do you want me to pull it? And I said, yeah, we should pull it because, the one thing I've learned, if people don't try number 1, they really rarely jump on with a second or a third issue, unfortunately. And that's why you see so many reboots with Marvel and DC, unfortunately. It wasn't that way when I was growing up. I started collecting at, Spider-Man 141, and I was just fine with that. But I don't know. Now people assume you have to kind of be on board from the top. So what does that mean for Bloom going forward? I guess I wish I had a specific answer. I'm kind of waiting to see how everything reopens. Unfortunately, now there's going to be a 2-month lead time from when I tell them, yeah, let's put it in the preview guide to when it actually shows up in the preview guide again, and then 2 more months till it hits the stores. So, yeah, I think, assuming things start to reopen, it probably would be solicited in September now for a October, November release. Ugh, that's brutal. Or is it August? I'm sorry, I just don't know. I was like that.
We'll let our listeners know when it's going to be solicited. And in the meantime, and we're going to be talking about it more on this episode, there's a lot of work out there for listeners who are new to the Apama, Tap Dance Killer, and Bloom universe, because you can get to know these characters now. There's a lot of product out now that it's very easy to get from your website. It's easy to get from comic shops, from digital platforms. As places reopen, this is the time to start grabbing some of the work, getting to know these characters in preparation for Bloom's release. So that's the nice part. This is part of a larger shared universe. And the nice part, I will say, about Apama, Tap Dance Killer, and Bloom, you can read any of these books in any order. And it really is a very different experience. Tap Dance Killer, you don't need to have read Apama to read Tap Dance Killer. If you've read Apama, you saw Tap Dance Killer's first appearance in Apama. Bloom, same thing. You've seen the first appearances in Apama. But because of the way that these stories have unfolded, you can read the Tap Dance Killer introductory issues first, and then jump back over into Apama, and read the appearances there, or vice versa. Same thing with Bloom. If you've read Bloom and Apama, you're going to be very comfortable jumping now and getting to see the origin of the character inside Bloom and Regina. And I really am encouraging everybody here, if you haven't jumped on these books, any one of these books is a great jump-on point. And that's something that I think is a testament to how you're crafting this world, because it's any of the first issues is a great jump-on point and into this universe, and you get sucked in right away because the characters are really exciting. And that's something that I found very consistent in all of your books. I really like the characters. I like the people, even in cases where maybe I shouldn't. I found myself enjoying hanging with them because they're so unique, and it's something that's really fun. So it's something that I'm anxiously looking forward to being able to talk to our listeners about when Bloom is coming out, so we can get them on board with getting this.
I appreciate that. And with back to one thing I can say about Regina, one of the my heroes is the film director Alejandro Jodorowsky. He's done comics too. When he was originally supposed to do Dune before David Lynch did it, and it's an amazing documentary. Jodorowsky's Dune. If you ever get a chance, for comic fans, film fans, it is so incredible. But one of the things he said is, I'm not creating a movie. I am creating a prophet. And that has been in the back of my mind with Regina from the get-go. And I'm telling you, there is something weird about this character, the way she has come around. The artist has told me this. Like, sometimes we just feel like we're not dealing with a character, but an entity, And so even in our big ad in the preview guide this month, it said the birth of a prophet, there is a reason, hopefully that she will be charismatic to you. And I want, by the time Bloom is over, I really do hope the people reading it are questioning things about reality.
Here's a great example of what I love about the character. There's this sequence where Ramsey's first approaching her about potentially being this villain, the inspiration for it. And I just want to comment on the artwork, because you get to see Ramsey's kind of comic geeky personality and all that, and we can all relate to it because, I'm that guy. It's like, so I get that. But the great part about her is there's this charisma in her facial expressions as she's going through. You see her start laughing at the notion, but then even when she does this pose, so you what? You draw me while I stand like this for 2 hours? There's a lot of personality to the interchange there, where he's kind of awkwardly explaining the situation to her. And you see this very real interchange. I'm always amazed by comic artists who are able to create a sense of motion in flat panels, where I feel like she's moving. There's that mind's eye that in between these panels, I feel the sense of movement with Regina. And she's a dancer, so you almost feel like you're dancing with her in her motions. I really feel like the artwork in this captures very much who Regina is. And it was something I really appreciated about this book, because I really felt a sense of motion and personality in her throughout it, because you got to be captivated by her. That's really an important part in the first issue of this. You got to be drawn into her as a person, because it's an introduction to her. And that part was, I get why Ramsey was digging her. And that was something that really came across in the pages for me. That was something I enjoyed.
And I should say something about Butch Mappa, the artist, because we got 200 submissions for both these projects from all over the country, all over the world, I should say. What I had probably, and if I liked somebody's work, I gave them, I had them do a tryout page. They did pinups. These were paid kind of audition pieces. And what I found about Butch with Regina was that so many people, so many artists tend to make her look cheap and, tribal dancer, trashy kind of thing. And I was just like, he was the guy that I saw a real person in Regina the most. Like, I liked her when he drew her, and it was like, it made the decision really easy. I like his whole, personal business he does with the characters. The scene where you got the friends walking through the festival. I just absolutely love the way he sort of has this familiarity with characters on a page. It's a really tough thing for an artist, and it's kind of that intangible that you really want. So yeah, I think he's actually doing the Avengers for IDW right now. So since we started, he's starting to pick up quite a bit.
That's cool. It's nice to see. I'm a big fan of following creators. Obviously, case in point, your own work. It's something, as I get to know people from projects, I like to follow them on to a wide variety of work as they go forward, because you know they're delivering something that connects with you. And it's like film, right? I mean, you mentioned film earlier. You start to become a fan of film creators. You start to become a fan of actors and actresses in films. The whole shebang as you go through the process. Comics are just like that, where the talent is something that you're drawn to. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Doris, the fiance in the story, because I think when you look at Ramsey, you're like sitting here like, dude, you got a pretty good life. I mean, she's really, I mean, yes, it's the typical interplay, and I'm guilty of this. It's funny where I was connected with Ramsey, where, I'm very into my geeky stuff, and what was I talking to my wife about the other night? I'm a big Disney fan, right? Classic, and I'm talking about classic Disney. I listen to a couple of podcasts relating to Disney history, and I get like way too into it. So sometimes I'll start having a conversation with my wife where the poor woman, and she is a saint, is mildly interested in the beginning. And by the end, it's kind of like, please, enough already. and when Ramsey's having this sequence where he's talking to her, where she's like entertained and having fun, but then she does the eye roll. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, wow, is she fully realized in this too? And adds to the whole sense of who he is in this piece. And it was something that I really appreciated, because one of the nice parts about this book and your work in general is supporting cast is really critical to getting to know the characters. And if you don't have those pieces, that's where sometimes if they become, like I said, thug number A, friend number B, and they aren't people that you feel are alive and breathing, the world doesn't take shape and you don't feel like you're a part of it. And she was somebody who made me, again, feel like, wow, I was connecting this to my wife and my relationship and things like that. And that's something where you feel like you're, in those moments, I'm hanging out with Ramsey and his wife. And we're like, listen, Ramsey, I'm going to tell you something, because I've been there before too. Cut right now. And I said, I need you to do the same thing for me, because I don't do it either. And I loved that. I loved that experience of understanding the character, having felt like I've been there before, because that's when you connect, and that's when you want to follow a story forward, when you're starting to have in your own mind mental conversations with the character and relating to your own personal experiences. And that was something that I thought was really well done in this first issue, because I really just had a good time.
Glad to hear it. Thank you.
So when you're creating characters like Ramsey and Doris and stuff like that, and Regina, you mentioned Regina, like where she came from. What about them? How much of that is a personal connection? Are they, do you pull that from people you know? Is it an amalgamation of a lot of things? Where do those characters come from then?
Yeah, Ramsey, we spent a lot of time on him, and looking at hairstyles of the '60s and different kinds of sort of geekiness in a way. It was a tough find, that one, Regina was, I explained her, but, and with Doris, I wanted somebody who I think really sort of more reminded me of my mom, because, that was almost the era. And, yeah, I'll do a lot of research, and I do try to, one of the things I preach is that you really do, because I teach comics as well, and that you really do know your characters, and you're able to answer a lot of questions about them that are below the surface, because it makes them so much easier to write, if you really do the backstory work. Yeah, it's just research. Obviously, I don't think you have to write a screenplay about every character before they show up in a comic, but it doesn't help. It doesn't hurt.
I don't want to spoil too much about Bloom because I want to save that for readers to enjoy when it comes out. Is there anything about the book, because I want to go in and talk a little bit more about Tap Dance Killer. Is there anything about the book that I didn't mention that you want to get out there? Because I think we've covered a lot of ground with this. It's a favorite book of mine. I can't wait for this to be released, and I can't wait to read subsequent issues of this book. But is there anything that I missed that maybe you wanted to mention?
I thought it was pretty thorough. No, I think we're in great shape.
So I do want to jump then to talk about Tap Dance Killer, because we've talked to you about it before, but now we've had this collection of it out there, and I'd like to delve a little bit more into it because I just did a reread of it, and man, did I have a good time with these characters. And we didn't get a chance to talk to you about some of the later issues, so I want to talk a little bit. And again, I'll keep from spoiling where the whole series goes, but I'd like to delve in a little deeper in some of the characters that happen along the way.
No, I was saying I think it was issue 1. We spoke right after issue 1 or right before it came out. I don't know that we've spoken since then.
We haven't, and I'm anxious. Cool. I'm anxious to talk about this because I was so jazzed rereading it because I love these characters. And you're right. We got a chance to talk to you in the past about issue 1, and we teased it, and we're getting a chance now to talk just a little deeper into these characters because they've become some of my favorites. Nikki is great because of the fact that what happens to her. Nikki is in this situation where she and 2 other characters that she was with, they go through the situation where basically they're drugged. They actually become the character that they were portraying. They were portraying these villains, and they become these villains to the point where it's a second personality. I loved that aspect of the story because as the issues go on, you're delving into 2 pieces where you're captivated by the Tap Dance Killer, but you're also getting to know Nikki as a person and feeling very sympathetic for her and getting and liking her. And when she gets into a lot of unfortunate circumstances along the way, you find yourself rooting for her. But she's the villain too. And it's such an interesting it's such an interesting tete-a-tete as you're going through, but yet she's a villain. I shouldn't be, but yet Nikki is such a likable person, and really you believe that she's a victim of circumstance. She really is a good person and cares about people, but then there's this alter ego, and I love that about it because it's a lot of what I like. That I want to be careful in how I'm saying this. I'm not saying it's this, but it is what I like about the relationship between, as a kid growing up, between Bruce Banner and the Hulk in the comics. You liked Bruce Banner because Bruce Banner's a really likable guy. And the Hulk, while the strength and everything the Hulk does is cool, there's times where the Hulk's destruction is, you get why people get angry at him and chase him. And even though, you do root for the Hulk, I found myself that way with the Tap Dance Killer, even though more clearly is a villain in the story. And I really liked that kind of relationship with her. And I don't want to seem like I'm oversimplifying the relationship. I'm not saying that this was the Hulk to me, but I like that kind of dual relationship where it's the same person, but there are different reasons why you like each one. And that was something that really stood out for me in them. And you got to nail that because you got to believe there's something captivating about the Tap Dance Killer and Nikki at the same time to enjoy those stories, because I think there's a duality to the type of storytelling you get because of it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and the Tap Dance Killer backstory also goes back a little further than the comics. Before we made a movie, we actually wrote a musical, and Tap Dance Killer was one of the songs. And actually, I'll give you a copy of that if you care to play it at any point during the the podcast here. But it's it just evolved over the course of like 20 years until she showed up in the comics.
And I would love that, because I think it's something when we close out the episode, it's fun to do stuff like that. And I think we actually did play it.
Oh, okay. Yes, we had it back then.
When we did the tease. And it's cool. I love the history of Tap Dance Killer. So timeline-wise, Tap Dance Killer then predates Hero Tomorrow, correct?
Correct. Yeah, by 12 years or even more. Like 14, 15 if I count the band days, because we had a rock band, and we Tap Dance Killer was one of the songs we played even in the band.
How cool is it to now be able to talk about Tap Dance Killer in this it's such an interesting journey with the concept Tap Dance Killer for you. Song, the musical, seeing this, now realized in this comic book world, it's something that kind of keeps coming back to you and is really malleable to different medium. I mean, because it really, you can see how this character works in a wide variety of different platforms. It's funny. As I was thinking through the character when I was reading it the other day, I've been playing a lot of video games because we're all quarantined, and I was thinking how much fun a Tap Dance Killer video game would be.
Oh my gosh! That's the thing we're missing in the comic that is always in my head is the percussive element of this. Somebody tap dancing and shooting a gun all in time. It's just sort of like there would be music to her just walking in and wiping out a room full of gangsters, So yeah, I mean, I think it even has hopefully legs beyond the comics, and the reaction to her has been these are all my children, but like at the shows, I mean, I sell probably 4-1 Tap Dance Killer versus Apama, and it breaks my heart a little bit, but I'm also grateful that I have a character that people are so gravitating towards.
See, one of the things I really dig about Tap Dance Killer is you have the beautiful blend of comedy with the action, with the drama, with the story, where the funny moments don't take away from the story. They don't distract you. It's like they're adding to it. And it's that whole vaudeville kind of vibe that you've got going with these villains. That's something for me that I absolutely love. That's some of my favorite, some of my favorite creators out there have those comedic elements where I'm laughing as I'm reading it, but it's not like I'm laughing at the book, I'm laughing with it, and so you've got a great blend there.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's something well, both Milo and I, through Apama and this one, we because sometimes people pick up Apama and they're like, so is this like a spoof on the 70s? I'm like, no, we play it all. It's all very straight. We just kind of have an approach that's a little more a Bronze Age sensibility. Yeah, I mean, if there's absurdity that happens, but it's all grounded. And that is something in the style of the art, with all of our artists. I always kind of want a more realistic approach versus a cartoony, because I feel like the characters are so sort of outrageous that putting them in a more structured art style is like a nice yin yang, and that I think goes with the humor versus the dark elements as well.
So on Nikki's side of the camp, we've got characters like, is it Jonelle? Am I pronouncing it right?
Janelle, yeah.
Yeah, Horn, who's her friend. You've got Vincent Reed, our friend Sir Terror. You've got Claus, please call me Fletcher, Miracle. And of course, the one that we talked about, we've got to talk about him briefly on our conversation, Punchline, Drayton Hayes, who, actually we got to talk to him about him as a boxer really more in that first issue. On that side, but one of the cool things as the story unfolds is we get to know about this crime family, Carlotta Vitali. She's got to be compelling too, and it was one of the things that I really enjoyed about this is her motivations with what happened with her son and her reasons for going after Nikki are something where you've got to really believe that Nikki's in trouble to the point where you're now rooting for the villain. And that's something where is the compelling part of the story. I'm totally Team Nikki. I'm on the team, as the story starts to unfold from issue to issue, I'm like into her, Sir Terror. It's like, yes, Sir Terror, get off your butt, help Nikki. It's this whole time I'm rallying the troops together in my mind as each page is turning. And that's part of the character drama of this piece, is you want to see her cohorts in crime rallying behind her and helping her against these insurmountable odds that she's facing because of circumstance. And that's the piece where you start to feel sympathetic for her, is these things have happened to Nikki because of that. And you care about her mom and you care about that relationship and you want to see her survive all of this that's going on. None of that matters if you don't believe that Carlotta is a dangerous and willing to do anything to take out Nikki in that process. So you know that those that are close to Nikki are in genuine danger because of Carlotta. And that was something that I really appreciated, and that was seeing that crime family unfold, truly believing that Carlotta is, nasty. And, she took the fall for her son. She's willing to go to those lengths. So what lengths will she go to when that same son has been taken down by the tap dance killer? Really cool stuff, and that was something that I really appreciated, was that piece. Where did the decision to go for the crime family come from? What was that something that you always intended from the get-go? How did you craft a foil for Nikki that you felt that you were satisfied with?
Well, it went back a little bit to the Apama, those issues 10 and 11 where she was introduced. Just a little background for someone who might not know this story. In Apama, our main character Ilya joins this theater troupe. That's where he meets Nikki and Vincent and Klaus. Once these three characters start becoming the actual villains, their next thing is, we got to take out the mafia of Cleveland, and this is the Romero family. So then Apama gets in the middle of this mob war between the actual mobsters and the theater mobsters. So that's what happens in Apama. So Tap Dance Killer picks up right where that leaves off. But I also, back to an earlier point you made, decided that I knew a lot of people hadn't read Apama when we were launching Tap Dance Killer. So I didn't even mention the previous story in the pages of Apama, of Tap Dance Killer 1. Because I wanted it to be self-contained. So you get it as a backstory, but you're not really told that it happened in another comic. And a lot of the reviews we got for Tap Dance Killer 1, they knew nothing of Apama. So that was intentionally separate, but it is still a continuation. And then now back to what you actually asked about Carlotta. Yeah, I was just trying to think about, okay, so what happened in Apama? She guns down three mobsters. In picking up her story, how can I make that be significant? So there was a little bit of, trying to figure that out. I hadn't planned on doing a Tap Dance Killer spinoff until I saw the reaction to her. People were sharing images of Tap Dance Killer on Facebook that knew nothing of the comics at all, like thousands of shares. So, it was like people really just dug the look of her, which is what I find on the show floor. Like people just stop at the banner and they're like, what's this? So Apama is a much more complicated pitch. Tap Dance Killer is pretty easy. So that was all sort of motivations to give her own thing and then try to figure out how that story with this mob war continues. And Carlotta, yeah, I think I'm I'm just intrigued with female villains versus male villains. Apparently, I kind of and also, I think we've seen male mobsters quite a bit, but we don't often see like the female mobster. So I thought I'd try something different, and I thought Donnie Hadiwijawa did a terrific job, kind of bringing her to life.
Lizzie was one of my favorite characters, and I loved the concept of these are people who. In the case of Nikki and Sir Terror and Claus and stuff like that, there was the whole drugging piece that we saw with them that led down their path and, Punchline. But Lizzie, it was interesting when you got to see how this experimentation continues and this idea of, especially as I'm getting older, you start thinking about death and passing and your relationships with people and people that you can't talk to again and things like that. And you see this kind of obsession with, can we reanimate people? Could we bring them back? Could we have those moments with people again? And this explores nature gone wrong, or science gone wrong, I should say, in the attempt to deal with nature. It happens more than once in the story of Tap Dance Killer, and it's something that I really enjoyed in this process. Was Lizzie was a character where you get why. There's like this affection between Claus and Lizzie, but some of the others are creeped out and some are annoyed, and there's a lot of different reactions to the character of Lizzie until you get to certain sequences where it's like, well, Lizzie being here right now is really a good thing in those sequences. And I really loved that journey where you've got this chaotic kind of character that, based on what is happening at the times, she plays a very different role in the whole sequence, and you completely understand why. And it was something that I really enjoyed about the character of Lizzie. I found her to be very cool and captivating because of that.
And I have to credit my daughter with Lizzie, because in issue 1 of Tap Dance Killer, Lizzie's in there. She's, I didn't even have her named. She's just in a chair like this failed experiment. And my daughter, Jada, she's like, what's going to happen to this lady? And I'm like, they're just going to get rid of her. She's a failed experiment. And she goes, don't kill her off. I'm like, don't kill her off? No, don't kill her off. I'm like, oh, this is my daughter. She's asking me a favor. I don't know, what am I going to do? I'm not going to kill her off. So then I started thinking about it. Well, what happens if I don't kill her off, And then, as of issue 1, I had no plans for Lizzie. But then it's amazing to me how things present themselves in my life. I'm telling you about the dancer I met, and the thing this thing that happened with Jada here, where it really made me think about that character. And I personally really do like Lizzie a lot too. And there are people who come up to me at the shows and they're like, that's their favorite character. Somebody just emailed me this week that they're going to cosplay Lizzie. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so honored. Yeah, I think she's a really fun character, and it wouldn't have happened without that little bit of intervention from my girl.
So can we talk a little bit about Jada with regards to some of the layouts and things? Because I thought that was one of the cool things when I was going through the collected edition. You get the Jada Pactor page, and you get to see like some of the layouts where Jada was a piece. And tell us a little bit about that, because I thought that was super cool.
So with all of the books, the artist will give me a layout pass. Donnie will do very rough, sketchy pencils, and then I put letters to it. But then, I'm like, this isn't quite what I had in mind. And I will sometimes go to my daughter and say, hey, can you act like you're sort of balancing on a balance beam for me? And she's like, sure. She just hops out of bed, does this. And then, I ask her to, can we do a few more? And she's already back in bed and says no, but there are so many times when I can't quite draw it myself, but I can go take a photo of her. The cover pose for issue 5 is a great example. I said, I need Nikki to be surrendering, but I need it to look dramatic, like a dancer surrendering. And she did this terrific pose, and that became our cover, layout. So it's wonderful to have the support of someone so close to you, of course, and that she's enthusiastic about it all.
I think it was a cool, that page was one that just really struck me, because it's cool when you feel like these characters have come to life, and then you see things like that, you're like, well, this is why. You're seeing some like real poses, and acting out of the sequence. And that's what, again, gives you that sense of something, some motion, some action, something happening in real life, because of the fact that there's things that you don't see in between panels, or, that got the character into that pose, that your mind naturally jumps to when something, evokes a sense of movement like that. And I was loving that page because I'm like, oh, of course this is what happened. I would have never, my mind wouldn't have gone there until I saw that. But you see it and like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. It's why those sequences look like they do, because it captures the reality of what that would look like when a person's doing it in those moments.
Yeah.
And that's, I think there's something strong to that. And it really stands out, I think, is just adding something extra to creating and fleshing out the world.
I appreciate that. And thanks again to my daughter.
I tell you, when we're talking about Lizzie, it was funny because Sean and I are big fans of Secret Six. And in Secret Six, with the last Gail Simone run, they had Ragdoll. And we actually love that character just because of the craziness, the chaos, the humor, but also just those sick moments, those beautiful sick moments. And with Lizzie, I had that same kind of vibe with her. I had that same moments where, she very easily could have been over the top comedic and would have lost something, but you took it right to that line and then you stopped it. And you gave us those really cool violent moments where it could have just gone over the edge. No, you take it right to that line where it just could possibly lose some traction, but no, it keeps it in check. And that's, I think, a really cool balance that you have going with it.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm not familiar with Secret Six, but I will check that out.
Punchline was a favorite character of mine, especially when there were sequences like where somebody'd wind up in the ceiling or something like that from the punches. Because I think that's one of the things that I really like when we talk about these characters. Everyone has a role and a power set or a way of interacting with the team that I think is compelling. And that was something where he would come in and it's just like extreme much. But again, it's the reminder, these aren't heroes. And it's something that I think it sets the book apart, is the fact that you are dealing with villains. Because of that, they're going to do things and react to situations in ways that, like Thor could do that, that type of thing, but wouldn't. But Punchline does not have that filter. And that stuff it's fun to see that. It just adds a layer of humor and fun and play that you can't always do in a book involving heroes. And if it happens, it's usually got a different tone to it because you're trying to put over the hero. So you want to be really down on the villain. In this case, we're on the side of the villains, even though, you kind of shouldn't be. But yet there's something thrilling about that ride with the villains. It's a chance. It's that escapism of, well, it's okay because it's here to be running with these people now. And that's something that I constantly enjoyed throughout the book, was these characters get fleshed out. You get to see what's going on in their mind, their internal dialogue, how they feel about each other is something that comes through, and that there is a certain code between them, a camaraderie between them, an honor amongst thieves, so to speak, between them that you get throughout this process. And it was something, Punchline, even being the one that starts shaking awake her terror, was something that I just really appreciated in this story. That the fact that I liked, as much as I loved Nikki, I loved the support, the team just as much. And that's something that I think is pretty critical to the story.
Thank you very much.
Well, you think about it, the Flash Rogues are so awesome because they have that code, because they stick together. They're not going to double cross them. The same thing goes on with this crew, that they're loyal to each other. This is a team. They're not going to double cross each other. When Nikki was completely in a bind, they're like, okay, time to go to work. The rest of the team shows up, to do some damage. And it's, if any of them were in the same bind, she'd be there for them. And I think that for me is something that really, it is tough calling them villains, but you have to call them villains because it's just the amount of violence. They got a really good body count going on here. You can't call them heroes with that kind of killing, but they do have that code, and I do like that about them. And even we've got a little bit on the crazy side going, they still have that connection to each other. And I think that's what makes them believable. That's what makes them readable. That's what makes them enjoyable.
Oh, thank you very much, Jim.
Another favorite sequence of mine is with Uzi Clown, and it's that 60 seconds bit where like this bomb was set for like 9 o'clock, and he's expecting, oh, we got time, it's not a big deal. That no, it's up in 60 seconds. Why? I didn't account for daylight savings, and I love his handling of the situation, all that. Just a very funny bit where these criminals had a well-laid plan, where they thought like everything was going to play out according to it, and somebody's screw up due to daylight savings put all of them in danger. And you got to see a sequence of events where the duality of Nikki shined through, and that was something that I really appreciated. The fact that you got the tap dance killer and the fact that she's drawn to this criminal side of her through what happened, but you get to see Nikki like fight through. And it is, I love when I talk about her duality, I love the struggle where all of a sudden this moral decision will come across her, and you'll get to see the strength of Nikki shine on through, where she goes and does this like noble thing. It was really cool in the process, and that was something that I really enjoyed. How much of that did you know when you were fleshing out this character, that you were going to have this kind of battle's not the right word, but the strength of the duality between the two? It was something I appreciated, the fact that we got to see that journey along the way, where there's moments where one winds up being the stronger influence than the other. Where did that come from, and how much of that was part of your planning of the character?
Yeah, I one of the things I talked about in the my sort of an essay section in the trade is how I kind of view writing like a road trip across the country, and I'm not taking any highways. So I know where I'm headed, but if there's a stop along the way that looks interesting, I'm definitely I'm gonna check it out, and I might get a room, and try the local cuisine and all that kind of stuff, because so that's what, there's a lot of these sort of little side trails that entice me, and I'm more than willing to take them if I think it's going to create a good story. So with this series, I knew there was going to be this battle between the two mobs, and that we're going to resolve that by the end of it. But the stuff that happens in the middle, I wasn't real sure on when I started. There was a lot of characters that I wanted to introduce that I didn't want to rush those. So I knew that was going to take some time. But so the thing I think that, this sort of epiphanic moment, which really became one of the bigger moments of the series, this whole time, the daylight savings thing. Yeah, it was a thing where I was just kind of listening to NPR, and they were talking about, how often they'll go in and they'll see a drug, they go to bust this drug house or something. Often it's not what you expect. There's a kid in a crib, and it's, so that presented an interesting dilemma right away. When I heard that, I was like, oh my God, that's so perfect. So somewhere between issues 2, 3, and 4, I don't remember exactly when, but that notion really hit me. And I do, as I said before, a lot of what this whole thing is there's a degree of planning, but there's also a degree of faith that the right solution is going to present itself when I need it.
Jim, is there anything else you want to ask about Tap Dance Killer? Because as an indulgence, I want to talk real quick about Apama, if we could. So is there anything?
Oh God, no! Let's talk Apama too.
Okay, Ted, if it's okay with you, I'd like to talk real quick, just a little bit about Apama issue 5, because being the fact that we're talking about Regina and Bloom, I went through, like I said, I did a geeky reread of Apama as I was going through, and I think it'd be fun to talk about issue number 5 of Apama, because we haven't had a chance to talk about this on the show, and I love Apama. I love Ilya and his backstory, and he's a guy who, talk about down on his luck, that you can't help but want to root for in this process. We all had these childhood dreams of wanting to be, you know, I mean, when I was a kid, I grew up, I loved old superhero shows. Some of my early influences were like the 60s Spider-Man cartoon. It was being rerun. I loved the Batman 66 show. I didn't know it was a spoof. I was a kid, you know, I would come home and want to watch those half-hour things. And to me, it was like the Saturday morning Shazam show and things like that. Any of those things that, like, you watch them now and you see them from, like, a different lens, you know, just because you're older and you kind of, like, especially the Batman 66, I appreciate it now for what they intended it for, but I think as a kid, I was pie in the sky, I want to be Batman, and that part was cool. So, Ilya, when you see this, he's discovered this animal, Apama, and realized that if he's able to get this pose right and tap into these inner forces, he gains this power and this ability and taps into this ability to channel this animal. And it's this strength. And it's a very short kind of rundown of how I see what he tapped into. But who wouldn't do this? I mean, because I was like sitting there, like, I'm like looking at that. I'm like, now he's a geek. And I'm like, if I thought there was any way, shape, or form that, like, doing this yoga pose or something like that would give me superpowers, I was saying, like, would 10-year-old me do that? I'm like, almost 50-year-old me would do this. I wouldn't, like, lose my job over it, but this would be something I would do after work. I do want to clarify that, and that would be something where maybe I'd shake him and remind him that. But that's one of the pieces that you like about him, because he's that friend where you're like, you root for him to kind of get it all together, because there's something likable about him. He's a good guy. He's a nice guy, but yet he's made just bad choices along the way, or hasn't maybe been motivated to, you know, he hasn't found that thing that clicks that makes him want to be who he's going to be. But you see the potential there in him. I love that now we see this guy, and he's got, you know, his pet rat that talks to him, and he can talk to animals now. And it's something that I just really, really dig about him. There's so much I could really say about this character of Ilya, but what I want to set the stage for, we've got a guy who now is down on his luck. He's kind of got a girlfriend now at this point, and it's the girl that he's been chasing, you know, and really, like, been drawn to all along. And you're like, he did it. Like, she sees him kind of the way we do, sees the untapped potential that's inside, but then his life as Apama, because it has, like, really overtaken, has now eaten into that relationship where you just know, like, oh, dude, don't mess this up, because, like, you got her. She really likes you, and we've seen it off panel. You know, where not off panel. We've seen the panels that he hasn't seen, where she's kind of admitted, I've been dating this guy. I'm kind of not really into him. You know, but yet this guy I am. I've got a thing for him. There's something that draws me to him. And you see that, like, he's really got the potential for this to be something, but yet you see the potential for him to potentially screw this up. And it's something that I really love about the drama of this piece, is the relationship between these two characters. How much, when you walked into Apama, did you know that these two and this relationship was something that you were going to make a piece? Because the relationship's pretty important to me as a part of this story. And we don't always get a ton of it every issue. And I like that, sometimes the teasing of it that happens, because he's got other actions that are going on. She's in the back of his mind and thinking about it. But how much did you think about this relationship being a part of who Ilya is?
Yeah, quite a bit. You know, I think Regina and Apama, you know, this is the nemesis of the series. I've always described her as such. You know, that you know, there's going to be other villains, there's going to be other big threats and things, but, like, Regina's it. You know, this is his Doctor Doom, as I said earlier. You know, that this is you know, not that she's anything like Doctor Doom, you know, but it just, she represents that, you know, and it's almost a villain that's kind of unbeatable in some ways, you know. It just, not to say that he won't ever beat her, or, you know, he may. Yeah, I guess from the start, it was nice to sort of have that. So you know, maybe we didn't have it in issues 1 or 2, but I think it was pretty. She shows up actually in issue 4 as sort of there's a panel of her when he's having all his visions from being attacked by the million-year hunger, sort of like this premonition. Yeah, she's got a presence in a lot of the issues, even though she doesn't really show up in them.
You mentioned the million-year hunger piece, and I love that this issue in particular opens up with like the TV bit where it's like, I saved you, and they can't even get that right. They identified this alien creature that came down as a polar bear and a squid. And I love his kind of frustration, because you see the battle scars from what this guy's gone through. And that's something I really like. You see with him being a hero is sometimes it's glorified in some books. I like when we have these street level ones where, yes, he's got powers, and it certainly far surpasses what any of us can do. And you get his draw to that sense of adventure and that sense of some of that comes from Apama, not Apama, Apama. Some of that comes from the animal inside him, but it's also him. Like this quest to find who he is, and you see that, and it's really something that now all of a sudden to see on TV, it's like, really. I have enough trouble with the ice cream truck. Now you're going to hit me with this on top of it, and I was so. In those moments, I was so like, I was with him going, oh, this guy cannot catch a break. And it made me like him even more, because yet he's still motivated to be a hero. He's still trying to make this work, in spite of the fact that he gets roadblock after roadblock after roadblock in this process. And it's something that I think the struggle in seeing him carry on makes me like him even more.
Yeah, he's... well, we've been accused of not giving him any breaks, so maybe we're. Yeah. Issue 12 was actually supposed to drop tomorrow, until the whole thing got delayed and all the printing got shut down. So it's all done. It's going to be, Lloyd Kaufman is in it. He plays a mattress salesman who offers Apama, there's a want ad in the paper. It says, Apama, I want to pay you $1,000. And Ilya, of course, assumes it's some grateful citizen that he saved. And it turns out it's, Lloyd Kaufman. He's not as the film producer. He is a mattress salesman saying, hey, I want you to sign autographs at my big Saturday blowout sale, and I'll pay you $1,000. And Ilya, being Ilya, is like, oh, of course. This sounds terrific. What could go wrong? So a lot.
Oh God, yeah.
So how did the Lloyd Kaufman appearance come out? What led you to go that route?
When we did Hero Tomorrow, we did the Fantasia Film Festival in Montreal, and we were actually picked up from the airport, Milo and I, with Lloyd. So it was just the three of us in this car ride to the hotel. So we got to know him and tell him what fans we were. And, through the years, we just kind of briefly emailed back and forth, not much, but I said, man, I got this idea. I'd really love you to just sort of be a character in our book as yourself, but as a mattress salesman. And he loved the idea. So there we go.
When you're doing these stories, like, how far out do you map? Because one of the things that I really appreciate in the book is the fact that while there's a main story going on, there's always other bits like Friedrich and what's going on with the car. And the fact that you kind of see this mystery of, like, there's this droplet that comes down from his head. And it's funny, I'm putting my fingers up to my head, like, mimicking like anybody can see what I'm doing right now. But it's something where you see this mystery of what just happened on the vehicle. And it's something that I really appreciate in the work, is that we've got this great story going on where we know our main character is going from place to place. And in between those pages, there's a page that's taken to remind you about another character and something that's been going on, to tease something that's coming down the road. Is that something, like, how do you map that out? Like, how far do you map that out, and what does that look like? Because it's something I've appreciated in all these books. Tap Dance Killer and this, it's the way that you foreshadow things that are coming later. I think it pulls me into the world, makes me want to read beyond just the issue that I'm currently reading right now.
Yeah, and I also should call out Benito Gallego, the artist on Apama. He's, does an amazing job at those kind of moments, and he comes from the same he's cut from the same cloth of this Bronze Age fanatic. So I think what we do, we try to tell episodic stories, which isn't necessarily done as much, because I think now we see more longer arcs. So what we were really trying to do is more of the 1 or 2 issue story, but it's maybe connected to a bigger piece. There's a weird thing where, again, this is where that intuition thing comes in. I'll have 6 stories bobbing around in my head that I want to tell right now. And, am I going to go forward with Tap Dance Killer 6, or is one of the other side characters maybe going to get a 2 or 3 issue little spin-off? Because Tap Dance Killer could easily be called the Vaudevillains. There's all those characters are featured pretty heavily, especially Punchline, and I've kind of wanted to do something more with him. At the same time, there's another character I want to debut, it would be that character's own series too. So yeah, there's a lot. I know where all these characters, all these stories are going. It's just a matter of which ones do I want to release next? Because being an indie like we are, with limited resources, you really have to pick and choose, So it's very difficult to balance that. And I don't have a real specific answer, unfortunately. It's just sort of whatever feels right. You go with your gut.
It's working for me because it's something that I'm really drawn to the storytelling in this. Being a Cleveland native, one of the things that I really appreciate is you throwing in Cleveland landmarks and them becoming a part of the story. Like even Ilya in this part where one of the things we're very lucky about for people who aren't from like Northeast Ohio, the park systems here are really cool. A lot of times people forget that we've got these really cool park systems here. And there's this part where he's, running through this park and it turns into this horror story. And it was something that I really found gripping all the way through because I remember, as a kid, my family would have cookouts and things like that and go through the park system. And my wife and I still do that where, we'll try a new park or something like that. And it's amazing how many new places there are to try when you think you've been to like every park and even just, the Northeast Ohio area. And there's a new place to come about that has some form of hook that makes you want to see the beauty of it. But he comes across this crashed car that's in the tree. And as he goes to further investigate, you see he's basically dropped into the middle of a horror film. And it leads him back to his childhood and stories. And I remember stories as a kid, about the local area, coming to life. And I was so connecting with this sequence. I'm like, man, is he nailing this piece where if you are local, there's another layer to this. And I think it's accessible to people. If you aren't from here, it's cool. It's really cool for people that are from here. And I imagine this is a lot what I didn't grow up in New York, but I loved Marvel Comics growing up. So I think for somebody who grew up in New York, where a lot of the Marvel Comics were based, they had this. We're getting this now in this book. And I think it's really cool because I think it reads very cool and very fresh for somebody who isn't from our area. And yet there's a personal connection for people who are. And I love this kind of stuff because it makes me feel even more immersed into this particular story. So I kind of appreciated the familiarity of our area being a part of all this. And Apama's our man.
Righto. Well, you write what you know. I've lived here my whole life,
I know, that's awesome, man. And I tell you, I was chuckling about from issue 9, the 10-cent beer night. With the Cleveland Grovers baseball team. I was laughing because my folks were supposed to be at the infamous, 10-cent beer night against the Rangers in '74. But I was kind of like, I was like 3 or something. So I was a little guy and they couldn't leave for whatever reason. So they didn't end up going to the game. And they're so glad they didn't go because that was just, I think one of the reasons, professional sports team was allowed to do 10-cent beer night again was because of Cleveland. Yeah.
Well, you know what? The funniest thing I learned after doing that was as bad as 10-cent beer night was and, the disaster it was, they did it again 2 weeks later. I mean, how Cleveland is that?
Yeah. Well, you think about it, they had the reason you can no longer have bottled beers at football games is because of the Browns. That one really horrible call. People started throwing the beers on the field, and it was just at the point it was pure chaos. They had this kind of stuff. It's Cleveland. We're Cleveland, so we are.
Yep.
I'm looking at the sequence right now with the bear. One of the things that I really liked about this is you see Apama rallying because you see this bear that's horribly mutilated. He comes across and he's able to talk to the bear. And I loved the choice with the animals that it's not like this fluent conversation, with the animals. It's there's something that is, you kind of connect it with, like the bear, while Apama understands the bear is talking like it's a bear. Instead of like, why, hello, Apama, how are you today? We're not getting any of that. And I appreciated that choice because it added this sense of this is still an animal he's talking to. But the fact that he connects with this animal on just a little bit of a different level than we do, it brings us into that and makes, like, when he has to, do the honors of, basically putting the poor animal out of his misery, you feel angry with him. And I was loving that moment because, you're not, when I first read the issue, not knowing what was going to come next, I remember the emotion of, okay, again, there's this cool foreshadowing of who did this? What does that look like? And not quite knowing what it was going to be. Rereading it now, I know the anticipation's like, dude, I get why you're angry, and if I was you and I was a Apama and I had your powers, I'd still go forward too, but I'm bringing a bat or something. I'm not going in alone. I'm bringing something with me because he's the hero, right? So he's, no matter what, if he knew what was coming, he would still go in. But I certainly, like right now, I'm wanting to coach him and saying, listen, hey, you're about to turn a corner that you do not want to go without at least some form of additional weaponry. And that was something that I love these issues in reread. When you know what's going to come, they read differently. And it's something that we're big advocates on our show for not just reading comics once, going back through and doing that second read through, that third read through. And we always encourage people to do like an art read through where just go through and enjoy the art, enjoy the storytelling of the art independent, because you get a different sense of the book then too with the way it's laid out. There's such value in comics in enjoying them multiple times. There's things you catch that were put on the page. There's details that were put there. And this is a great example of a book that there's a lot of depth. And if you just read this once, you really miss so much. And this is a great issue that's a great example of that because, man, the journey of this, I love quests. I'm a big fan of fantasy literature as well as reading comics and adventure stories and things like that. And this is one of the things that I enjoy about fantasy literature. It's the quest. And that like he's on a journey here right now, and this is going to lead to something big. And I love that each page is just a little bit closer on this ride. And it was so cool because the rescue's just the beginning. He's like going to rescue her, and like, dude, you have no idea what you've just walked into. And this is such a great way to set up a villain because you've now this was not like, bam, page 1, we know who the villain is. We're at this point like 14 pages in, and we still haven't seen her yet. And to your point, we've seen her, yes, in previous issues, but not like this. Not in this circumstance where you're now getting the cult put before you. You're getting this sense of how they feel about her. Why are they drawn to her? What is it that's pulling them in? And I loved this setup because it feels big. It feels bigger because you've seen it in the previous issue leading into this, and you know that this is something we've been building towards. But to see it here, after you've been going on this quest and this journey, and to see him dealing with overwhelming numbers and know there's somebody else was something that I just, wow, was this a cool issue? And it was why I wanted to make sure to talk about it today, because I thought this is just way cool.
Thank you so much. So
we finally get the reveal of her. This was my first exposure to her, reading her in this book and being able to see her and the clever design. Because even here, you see we see issue number 1 of Bloom that we talked about earlier, the being captivated by her, before she's really turned into what we see on this page. And there's still that allure to her. There's something interesting about her. You see, the tattoos and you see, there's a beauty underneath there. Yet there's a danger immediately to her that's apparent here that you eventually get to in issue 1 of Bloom. But here you see it, it's like right in your face. It's like, this is fully realized. Like, he is now in a situation. I love that she won't answer him. That was something that I really digged in this moment. He's trying to pin her down. She shows quickly that she's in control from a psychological standpoint. She's guiding the conversation. She's guiding the tone. She's guiding how it's going to go. And that was something that I really appreciated was it's not just the visual look of the character. There's a psychological depth that you've created to this character that I really, really liked. And that was something that you create layered characters. And is that something like the multi-layers of the character, like right from the get-go as you're originally maybe doing a character treatment, or like the screenplay you mentioned? Or is this, do you know that she's this person because of the screenplay that you did, this depth? Is that where that came from?
It's probably a little bit of both. I think with any, I think part of our process is we don't have a character until it's multi-dimensional. We just don't feel like it's ready for prime time. So part of our process is to always make sure we've really got more than what's on the surface. So with her, it was kind of a, really flesh it all out in that screenplay. I knew her so well from that. And I like the idea that she's been waiting for him since Woodstock, like that's, she mentions it, in that next page, I missed Woodstock because of you. Like, he's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
And I was chuckling with that whole sequence, though, because he's like, it's not like I can hit a woman. And she just drops him. I'm like, yeah.
And with authority. That punch was like, and I loved that because it's, when you first see her, you think like sultry, and that type of thing. And then you start to realize as you turn each page and see each panel, there's more going on here. And you see it in the way that, she's mentally reacting. Then you see the physical piece and the power in those moments. And it's like, whoa. And this is somebody at this stage, we're talking about, this is issue 5. And for anybody out there who hasn't read this, I so encourage you to go and read the first 4 issues straight on through to this point, because you get to see some establishment. Apama's a badass, and he's been through a lot and fought and struggled through a lot. You got to see him fight a cult to get to this point, where then he's fighting against her, and she's really controlling this whole sequence. You see her control it verbally, mentally, physically, and then supernaturally, with all of a sudden, she's, pinning him to the wall, and he is overpowered in a way that we have not seen since before he had the powers, and the kids were doing it to him. So it's something at this point. It was such a great issue to have this done because he's been established at this point. And I really liked that at this point now we're seeing somebody who can really do a number on him. And you're just like, she's doing it effortlessly. She's not remotely intimidated by him. And she's prepared and knows what he's all about. And it was so cool to see.
She's got, 40 years to prepare for this battle. So he wasn't quite ready.
And it was something that I really enjoyed. The page that I really appreciated, there's this cool page where you get in the head in the backstory of some of the cult members. The thing that I liked about the cult members is they weren't drones. Like, each one of them has a unique story. Each one of them has a unique place in the cult. And also a unique relationship to how they feel about the cult even. And I was thinking about Hazy Jane, for example, as far as like even her viewpoint in her relationship with the cult is different than the rest. And I really appreciated that page because you're seeing what on that page in the middle, straight on down, it's almost like an upside down T, where you're seeing what she's doing to Apama, kind of leaving a mark on him. But through that process, I thought it was really cool that you guys took the time to flesh out the cult a little bit and give us a sense of who they are and give us a little backstory and a taste as far as what that is. Because I think that made the followers of Regina even more real. When you think that they're just, again, not like cult member A, cult member B and stuff like that. I liked that page a lot. And it was a great art page as well. It was a home run.
Oh, we spent a lot of time on that one. I'm glad it came off and accomplished what we hoped it would have.
I'm going to be cautious at how much, because I really do want people to read this issue. I'm kind of doing a tease off of this as well. You got to see where this all goes, because I'm actually going to leave Ilya where we are right now, kind of leaving him hanging, because if there's listeners out here who haven't read, we've been talking about Bloom and talking about the character. This is available in the collected edition. This is available as a single issue. This is issue number 5 of Apama, and it's something that I highly recommend that you read, because it's one of my favorite books, and I've been really, really digging this whole universe. And as we were doing like rereads of this, we hadn't mentioned talking about Apama on this. And by the way, I should say the full name of the book is Apama the Undiscovered Animal. And I've been talking about issue number 5, teasing it. I want you to read this and experience it for the first time on the pages. So I'm leaving you with kind of a cliffhanger, knowing that there's multiple pages for you to read beyond what we just talked about. This is an amazing, amazing title. And we talked about a lot of content there, so I really want our listeners to check out these books, Apama the Undiscovered Animal, Tap Dance Killer, and please listen to the show. We will be posting on our website and Facebook group and Twitter and stuff like that when we know details on the release of Bloom, because it's a book that I'm highly excited for because of how much I'm just enjoying this universe. And Bloom is something that I'm highly encouraging our listeners to check out because it's really cool. Guys, is there anything, Jim, Ted, anything I didn't mention here today that you'd like to mention? I want to make sure to give time for those things. It's very easy for me to have diarrhea of the mouth for this material because I love it so much. I don't want to leave something out that maybe one of you two wanted to mention.
No.
Jim?
A lot of times I just let Sean go because I can really tell when he loves something. And I'm just sitting there nodding my head along, yes, and occasionally I'll throw some extra stuff in. But no, yeah, dude, man, you know how much we really dig your stuff. And again, as I've said multiple times, it's that beautiful blend of comedic as well as really cool stories. And you got some great characters in here, and you partnered up with some really good art teams. All these books look absolutely wonderful, and so this is definitely, these are all 3 of these definite home runs, and I just love this universe. I love the interconnection of them. So I'm always into more and whatever else you got for us in this within this universe. I'm all in.
Thank you. I guess the only thing I'd add is, we are still shipping from our website, and I'm offering a 20% discount if you use the code ROARING2020s. So, all these are there. I can sign anything too if people request that. So, please check out herotomorrow.com, Facebook/Hero Tomorrow, and Instagram, either Ted Sikora, Sikora, or Hero Tomorrow there as well.
And I'll have links to all of that in our show notes, so anybody listening, please, that'll be available in the show notes on the podcast episode, but it'll also be available on our website, which will then go out to Facebook and Twitter and all that, so you can just click on them and go. Ted, I want to thank you, as always. You've always been so generous as a guest to give us some great time to talk about your work. Become a huge fan of your material, starting from the actual movie Hero Tomorrow straight on through to the comic book work. As a storyteller, you have just really captivated me with these wonderful characters and these wonderful worlds that you take me to. And I'm a big fan, and it's just always great to have an opportunity to talk to you about your work.
Well, thank you, and I greatly appreciate the enthusiasm and also the generosity that you have given to me. So we're even on that.
Sounds good.
Holy caffeine!
Once again, I want to thank Ted Sikora for joining us. We will be giving you information on when Bloom is solicited, or resolicited, I should say, at this point. It is available right now for ordering at dcbservice.com. It's safe to order it right now. Keep in mind that if that solicitation is canceled, which it looks like it's going to be, that it will be resolicited again in the future. DCB Service usually lets you know if they have the dates available, when it is going to be resolicited. So keep that in mind. It's a safe zone if you want to pre-order it. I want to thank him again for joining our show. Want to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you part of the show. RagingBullets@gmail.com also is the email address if you want to contact us that way. RagingBullets.com is our show website. News on the upcoming episodes. It feeds into Twitter. It feeds into our Facebook fan page. We are also part of an amazing Facebook group community. It's a real safe zone to talk comics, and it's DC focused, but they talk comics, they talk games, they talk, all of pop culture, movies, film, everything. It's just a wonderful group of people. I go there first to find out my news, just because there's such great people there that post comic solicitations, even news about what's going on right now, like when, what in these uncertain times, information about what's going on with their comics. And I really appreciate the team of people over there that just regularly are posting content, letting us know what's going on. It really is their community, and we are proud to be a part of it. So I just wanted to shout them out. Jim and I are both on the PlayStation Network. I'm Raging_Bullets. He's Sensei_whatnot. And please connect with us that way. Jim, we're sponsored this episode, of course, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. What's going on over at DCBService.com?
Well, they're continuing doing some great bundle deals, on DC Universe, bundle deals on variant covers, giving us nice discounts on different statues and T-shirts, as well as some of the collected in trades. So thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, Transmetropolitan Trade Paperback Book 3 is 42% off, $17.39. Batman, Last Night on Earth hardcover, 42% off, only $17.39. Amazing story. Green Arrow Year 1 Deluxe Edition hardcover, Andy Diggle and Jock. If you missed this one, it's a great story. 42% off, only $23.19. Batman Detective Comics, Volume 3, Greetings from Gotham, 42% off, $14.49. And lastly, one of my favorites, Freedom Fighters, Rise of a Nation trade paperback, 42% off, $14.49. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Our next episode, Jim, let's talk Batman and the Outsiders number 12, Hawkman number 23, and Lost Carnival, a Dick Grayson graphic novel. We will see you then.
Bye.
Organized crime or a thing. Met in May, now I'm running the ring. My gig is tap straight to the point. Collect my fee or I bust up the joint. I am a darling, mischievous pixie. I am a wraith and I'm getting my kicks. See if you're not on time to pay your dues, you're gonna meet the soles of my shoes. Don't want your love, don't got the time. I'm the tap dance killer. Where's the next crime? Tapping away till my next killing day. The tap dance killer, a child at play. Tap, toe, heel, step into the room. Dig, tip, ticket-a-tap. Boom. I tried to go straight, it made me hate it. Nothing ever beat the sound of street at my feet. Don't look to me to be your guide. Sometimes the blood only makes me slide, 'cause I got rhythm tapping in my shoes, and something that'll cure all your blues. Don't want your love, don't got the time. I'm the tap dance killer. Where's the next crime? Tapping away till my next killing day. The tap dance killer, a child at play. Zip it up with party, but I'm with it. I did down. I was ever did up. Zap it, but I'm up. Tap it, tap, whip it, but I'm down. Ha! Whip it, zip it. You baba did that and what did it die? Don't want your love. Don't got the time. I'm the tap dance killer. Where's the next crime? Tapping away till my next killing day. The tap dance killer, a child at play. Don't want your love tonight. I'm the tap dance killer. I'm the tapping around and around and around, round. No matter the venue, they all know that I'll tap, jab, stomp, shoot, kill 'em with style.